Hey y'all, welcome to the realm of comics where we discuss everything graphic novels, comics, and manga related. And I am winded. Why am I winded? I feel so winded. But I am here to talk a little bit about graphic novels, comics, manga in the form of a discussion. So I think primarily I'm going to be using more graphic novels as an example, because this was something that I talked about. I can't remember whether it was my mid-month or my final January wrap-up, talking about how the publishing industry has changed its production of graphic novels. Not that it hasn't ever done it, but I'm starting to see some shifts in publishing, which is very, very interesting, and I want to talk about it just a little bit. I don't have a whole bunch of stats and data, nothing like that. This is just my own personal kind of view or perspective of what I've been seeing on the back end, and then some of the reasons why I think this might be happening. So, of course, typically the conversation surrounding graphic novels, comics, manga, the issue really does happen quite a lot where people question the validity behind reading those three things. So we, in fact, do know that it counts as real reading. There's a certain level of complexity that comes with graphic novels, comics, and manga, and not just in the storytelling, not just in the art, but the way that your brain has to process the information to understand a graphic novel or a comic or manga. That combination of art and text. I know people who struggle with reading all three of those because of the fact that they feel like they can't really grasp the idea of having to follow both the art and text of a story and would rather prefer it just be prose. And I think that when we think about the complexity of graphic novels, comics, and manga, there's no way to deny that they count as real reading. It's a different format of literature, but it's just as valuable, just as impactful. And I think one of the key things that I'm starting to notice is more people who are not really like in the graphic novel, comic, and manga community are starting to access this stuff more. Now, I know that there are a lot of thoughts about how mainstream manga has gone. I'm not going to talk about that here. I think that that could be its own video discussion. But what I have seen is an influx of graphic novels that are being produced widely by publishers. And we're talking the biggest publishers that now have imprints that are specifically dedicated to publishing graphic novels. I have even seen them now start to create individual lines that specialize with producing graphic novels in the form of beginner readers. That way graphic novels are now accessible to even the youngest groups. So those level readers that you see, whether you go to the library or the bookstore, those now come in like the I Can Read Comics type of format, or they have now started making, Scholastica does these graphics chapter books where they are like an introductory chapter book for those who may not be ready for like that middle grade level. They still are somewhere in between maybe the ages of like 5, I would say 5 to 8-ish. They have those now. So any reading level that a person is at, there seems to be an access point to graphic novels, which is something that I absolutely adore and love and think is awesome, because I think that graphic novels have been the butt of everyone's joke for the longest time. And even now still, I think in the broader book community, graphic novels are often seen as like a tool to boost your numbers, and that's how people are reading so many things. But that's, once again, that in itself also is a completely different conversation, because why do you care? Why do you care? Regardless though, I think that this broader reach of graphic novels, this inclusion of different reading levels, different age groups taken into consideration, is a huge thing. Now, of course, in my mind, it's kind of split. So I have some things that kind of make me, it's not even really a level of concern, but things that you do have to question, which of course is the monetary compensation that comes for publishers who are producing these things. I think that the reason why the perspective of graphic novels has changed drastically, especially in the past couple of years, is the pandemic. We know that right now there are plenty of videos out there on YouTube from educators, people who are raising this new generation of kids. Reading has become a huge thing. The struggle that has now come with reading, the close observation of literacy rates, even things that we are seeing boots to the ground as librarians, reading has changed. The ability to be able to read on grade level has changed. And I'm not saying that graphic novels don't challenge readers, but I think that graphic novels present information in a way that's more easily digested. And so what we have been seeing is that kids who, may have typically picked up a middle grade book, and there's a lot of pieces and parts to this, and each one could be its own discussion, because middle grade in itself is having an issue now, which breaks my heart a little bit, about books being too long. So we're talking about books that are like 350, 400 pages long. At this point, with the pandemic, with the gap in in-person education and reading, that's not a thing that is going to, that's just not a thing anymore in terms of kids like walking in. And I'm not saying that no kids walk in and they don't pick up, those tomes that are, 350 pages up, which is really long, honestly, for a middle grade novel. But a lot of kids pick up those books now and they flip through them and they're pretty much like, yeah, this is too much text. I can't do this. This is not accessible for me anymore. This is too overwhelming. And so what I think is happening now is that we are seeing more kids gravitate towards graphic novels, which is a great thing. It is a positive thing. It is a way to fill that gap where we have more, I think, in my personal experience, I feel like this is the most reluctant and struggling readers that I have seen in a very long time. And once again, I attribute a lot of that back to the pandemic. And there's a lot of conversations now about how we actually scientifically how we learn how to read, and so that also plays a role and a factor into it. But I think that we are now seeing publishing notice those trends, and the fact that kids are gravitating more towards graphic novels, with manga becoming more accessible, with this, now it's not an obsession, but I would say this appreciation for comics. I think that kids want a piece of that. I think that culturally we are moving towards things like that becoming more mainstream. There were certain pockets of people who really delved into the comic and manga world and the graphic novel world, and now I think that because it's becoming more of and I hate to say the word normalized, because it's never been abnormal, but I think that it was not as culturally prevalent as it is now, that we have kids now wanting to get a piece of it. And it also helps for those that are maybe not reading on grade level, or are having trouble jumping from one stage of reading to another, or kids that may be reluctant readers. They've always been great tools for that, but I think now we're seeing that even more than we have in the past. And so publishing, rightfully so, has started picking up on the success of graphic novels, the need for graphic novels. And so we are getting two things, and this is where I kind of this is kind of where I jump in and feel like I'm conflicted. So we're getting a lot of original works. I'm seeing young adult graphic novels become a huge thing, which I think is awesome, because for teens, it's always been an awkward place to be caught in between graphic novels for middle grade readers and children, and then the adult content. And so it's there wasn't really a lot that was specified towards them. Granted, there is a lot of adult graphic novels and comics that I think are definitely appropriate for a teen audience, but an actual grouping of teen graphic novels, like specifically we are creating books with teens in mind, I think that's a little bit newer, and we're starting to see a lot more of that content, which is a positive. But like I said, a lot of original works, a lot of things that people are finding fascinating, they're gravitating towards. Even in the larger book community, I'm seeing a lot of people pick up these graphic novels and they're really enjoying them. So that's a plus. But where's the plus? There may be a minus, and my friends, we have a minus in all of this. And the minus aspect, or I should say the negative aspect of this, is that publishing can run out. Publishing sometimes doesn't know when enough is enough and when we should just stop, but they are a business that's looking to make money, and where they see money, they go to. And graphic novels are making the money, and you can price them fairly high because it's artwork. They're full color. Most of them are full color. And so you're looking at a hardcover, even a hardcover middle grade graphic novel is going to run you over $20. People will pay for it. Me, I check it out from the library. Granted, I do select all of this stuff, but I rent a library. I can't afford to do that, but some people can and some people do. The issue that I am seeing with publishing is the need to create an adaptation, a graphic novel adaptation for everything. That is where we are starting to kind of like bump heads a little bit, because everything does not need a graphic novel adaptation. I always tell people that it is much more difficult to adapt a prose book to a graphic novel than it is to come up with, I think, sometimes your own original work, because there's only but so much of the material that you can take from the original source. And so it can be hard to adapt it when certain elements that make that book magical in prose format cannot translate well into graphic novel format. And so what I'm seeing is that publishing is taking a lot of popular middle grade and even young adult series, because I've seen it with young adults as well, but more so in the middle grade realm, that we feel the need to adapt everything. There is currently a graphic novel adaptation for Keepers of the Lost Cities, which I think is very strange to choose as a graphic novel adaptation, considering that these books are 800, 900 pages long. They range anywhere from 450 and up. Some of the longest ones being close to 1,000 pages. I don't know how you effectively adapt that into a graphic novel, because at the end of the day, the first book even had to be adapted into multiple parts. I think it's going to be 2 books, because the one that they released last year was part 1. That's a lot. I don't know if that was actually necessary. They are adapting Sarah Milanowski's I forget what it's called, but like it's like a Fractured Fairy Tale series. They're adapting that. They've already started adapting the Magic Tree House. All the Babysitter's Club books are getting adaptations. And I start to question, like, for these longer series, like for Babysitter's Club, which has an extensive backlist, or even for Magic Tree House, which has an extensive backlist, do you plan to do a graphic novel adaptation for each one of these books? Now, granted, part of me, as I said, I'm kind of like, because, you know, in some ways it does create another point of access to a great series. And I know kids absolutely adore them. Wings of Fire graphic novels, people absolutely adore them. Kids love them. Teens love them. Adults love them. Like, so it's not so much like hatred that these things are getting adapted. I just don't know if everything needs to get adapted. And part of me wonders, like, how many like original ideas are we passing over to adapt series that we know are already popular, and we just want to make them into graphic novel format because it's quick money. Granted, smart business move, but it makes me wonder sometimes about, like, what is their thought process behind choosing like which ones get adapted, because at this point I feel like everything is getting adapted. Even Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library, that has a graphic novel adaptation, which I will be reading. Don't get it twisted, I will be reading it. But I think that some of these works are easily translated to graphic novel, whereas others are not. I think that the Magic Tree House books are short enough that they can really condense the information and package it in a way that you're not really deviating too much from the original text. But I think the more complex the book is, the more complex, the longer the book is, the more difficult it is to adapt that information into a completely different format. And it doesn't always work. I adore the Percy Jackson series, but I absolutely loathe the Percy Jackson graphic novels. I think they're horrible. I think they leave out too much, and it loses its magic because the storytelling is not the same, because you can't take everything from the book. because it is that complex of a fantasy world. And to translate that into graphic novel format, it just is not, it's not really doing it for me per se. So stuff like that, it's just like, it doesn't always work. And granted, once again, I'm not the intended audience. Kids love them. That's the intended audience. But I think if I had like one gripe with that, that would probably be it. This need to adapt everything that we know has been previously successful, and now we want to continue to make money off of this, make a profit, because we know that graphic novels are like on fire right now. So don't get me wrong, I appreciate the love and respect that graphic novels are getting, because they have been devalued and unappreciated by mainstream audiences for such a long time, that now to see them kind of breaking away and being loved and appreciated, it just makes my heart warm. But I am gonna have to keep watching publishing and see what they do. I think there's some pros and some cons to what they're doing right now, but I'm really interested in seeing that. So what trends have you seen in terms of graphic novels, comics, and manga that you find really interesting? Have you noticed what I've noticed? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. And if you're looking to support the channel or follow me on social media, all the links will be down in the description box below. And I will be back with another video soon.